There are quite a few stories going on about the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. The fact that Jack Campbell is out on the injury reserve is a pretty big deal because if the Maple Leafs do not feel like Campbell is going to be ready to go once he does return, it might prompt them for a little bit more of an extended discussion as to whether or not a goaltender should be on their acquisition list. But aside from that, I wanted to talk about another defenseman on this team, or not really on this team. I think that's kind of the reason why we're talking about this guy. It's because he is not on this team that this topic is even a conversation. Let's talk today about somebody in the Maple Leafs organization who, according to Elliotte Friedman in the 32 Thoughts article, has indeed requested a trade. We're taking some time away from the Toronto Maple Leafs and going over to the Toronto Marlies because if you take a look at this team and you see who exactly is putting up the numbers on this squad, you won't go too far before you find yourselves the player we're talking about here today. Let's go over the Toronto Marlies' second overall point scorer and number one defenseman on the team, Joseph Duszak. Because when it comes to his entire profile, apparently the trade market suggests that he could be looking for a fresh start. So, who is Joe Duszak and what exactly is the profile here? Well, Joseph Duszak is a 24-year-old turning 25-year-old right-handed defenseman, 5'10", 185, signed till the end of this season at $750,000. He was initially a college free agent, undrafted. He was eligible for the, 2015 NHL Entry Draft, but he didn't actually go anywhere. He wasn't drafted by any team because in 2015 he was playing in the United States High School Prep League where he had 57 points in 50 games for the PAL Junior Islanders. He also was a, what the heck is that, 3.5 points per game player with the Portledge School, so there you go. He was absolutely dominating the high school leagues and the high school junior scene over there, but of course it's not really the most high profile league in the world, so he wasn't ever drafted in this position. He stayed in that league for his draft plus 1 year, and then for his drafts 2, 3, and 4 years, he was in the NCAA for Maryhurst University. It was in this system where he actually proved to be extremely valuable as an NCAA defenseman, and in his last season, his junior year of play, he had 47 points in 37 NCAA games. You go over to the entire collegiate system this year, and he was the third most productive NCAA defender behind Cale Makar and Adam Fox. They had 49 and 48 points, Duszak had 47, and so the company that this guy was keeping for himself was very, very impressive. Duszak then signed a 2-year contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he made his debut with the Marlies that season. His following year was spent split up between the Marlies and the Newfoundland Grounders in the ECHL, where for both teams he was a productive offensive defenseman. He was just under a point per game for the Marlies, and for the Growlers he was over a point per game. Give it another year in 2020-2021, he gets 12 points in 25 games, so a little bit of a slip offensively in terms of the numbers, but this year he's got himself 37 points in 38 games, again with the Toronto Marlies, and he's on pace for 61 points in 63 games. You go over to the entire AHL, and you can see that Duszak is one of the top defenders in the entire league when it comes to points. Just like his NCAA season in his junior year, he is third overall. The only guys better than him this year are two Jordans, one from the Eagles and one from the Reign. Still though, despite the fact that he isn't first, he still is pretty good, and if you watch the Marlies tape, you also watch the tape of him with Mercyhurst in the NCAA, you can see that Duszak is a pretty capable, offensively dynamic defenseman. He's got some pretty good lateral mobility, he's not afraid to change the angle of where he's passing or shooting, he's got a good playmaker side to him, especially on that right side of the point, where he's able to quickly shift from side to side, opening up new passing opportunities, and it usually serves him well. It has been for the past few years here. He's also got a pretty good shot, he can set up rebounds, he can set up scrums right there in the crease for his teammates to put the puck in. He's been doing some pretty good things over the past few years, it's why he's got so many points. Now we go over onto what Elliotte Friedman wrote about when it comes to Duszak and his entire profile here. It's on the most recent edition of 32 Thoughts, taking a look around the NHL trade market. This was from March 9th, so yesterday. You can go ahead and read, the link will be in the description below. Here's number 16, quote of the week. One executive asked if he thought Nick Robertson is getting a showcase in Toronto. I replied, there are 20 scouts watching the Marlies every night. He's not someone I know real well, but AHL Toronto defenseman Joseph Duszak is looking for a new start. He's got 37 points, 32 of them assists in 37 games. I didn't see it, but he also played one game at forward. Now, why would a guy who is a pretty good offensive defenseman, who has been in the Marlies system producing points like crazy, want to trade? Well, let's go over on what Kyle says on Twitter here, because what he did was he summarized why this might be the case in a pretty good way. He posted the quote from Friedman, and he also talked about the player card right here, stats via pick224.com. This is a pretty good statistical profile here for Duszak. You can see that he's got himself a pretty good wins above replacement number, or not wins, but most everything else above replacement. The only negative numbers he has are his even strength goals against expected per 60 and his shooting percentage, but everywhere else he is a positive player. Some of these categories, like estimated power play assists per 60 minutes, he is in the top percentile of the league. Friedman also notes that Duszak played one game at forward before. This came in the season opener last year with the Marlies, a move that was a one-time thing, presumably due to the Marlies' lack of available players at the time. Actually, it looks like when the Marlies dressed 7 defensemen a few days ago, Duszak spent some more time again at forward. Now, this is kind of why he might even be in this position in the first place. There's somebody that replies, okay, nice. And the following response pretty much sets up the entire thing you need to know here. I get it. Duszak is buried in the depth chart. He's nearly 25 years old, and he hasn't come close to getting a call-up. He's also an offensive guy on a team that really isn't looking for that. Tell them you want a fresh start and see if you can be a deadline move to a team that needs bodies. And that's pretty much what I thought about as well, the fact that Duszak is this flashy, offensively capable guy, and the Leafs don't really need any more of those kinds of players, especially on their blue line, where you could say that a defensive defenseman is probably more suitable for their needs at the moment. You've got guys all over the place, like Jacob Chychrun and Ben Sherratt, that are being connected to Toronto, and you see these guys, sure, some of them produce some big numbers, Chychrun especially last year, but they're a lot more refined defensively, and they're noted by everybody else as being more capable in their own zone than guys like Justin Hall, for example. Duszak, while good, isn't really what the Toronto Maple Leafs need at the moment, and the fact that there are so many guys ahead of him in the depth chart, you have the Sandins, you have the Liljegren's, you have the Dermotts, you have the Halls, of course, you have other players that have made their homes in the Toronto Maple Leafs. There is not really an opportunity for a guy like Duszak to really fixate himself in the NHL, especially with this being the last year of his contract. So, if there is any move going out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Dubas went out and sent him away to another team that could use the bodies on their NHL roster. We have seen Dubas do things like this before, where you have guys that just haven't cracked the NHL or that just haven't found themselves a solidified role with the Maple Leafs, and guess what? Dubas goes out there and trades them away to other teams that could use them in better positions than Toronto could. You saw this with Barabanov, you saw this with a few other guys too, so it would be pretty characteristic for Dubas to do something like this and trade Duszak away to an actual team that could use him, rather than hold on to him and make his NHL dreams wither away. That's not to suggest that he doesn't have anything or whatever, it's just opportunity, you know? Like, he is behind so many other guys, and these other guys all have needs that the Toronto Maple Leafs have more needs for than the profile that he possesses. He's not that big, he's a lot more flashy offensively. I don't want to make it seem like he's bad defensively, but when you're an offensive defenseman in the AHL who is as potent as Duszak has been, plus the added context of what's going on with the Maple Leafs right now, the defending on that team, the goaltending of that team, it's really easy to go out there and understand why Maple Leafs people and media are saying, okay, Ben Sherratt is who this team needs, not necessarily Joseph Duszak. So if you're a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, or a fan of the Marlies, or a fan of the Mercyhurst University NCAA Men's Ice Hockey Club, go ahead and let me know in the comments all your thoughts about Duszak and the profile he possesses. He was a very good standout defender in the collegiate system 3 years ago. Ever since then, he's made his new home in the Marlies, but it seems like we might get ourselves a situation where that home is no longer towards the end of this current contract. Let me know in the comments what do you think Duszak should go for. I wouldn't really think the price for this guy should be too high. I'm thinking maybe a third, second round pick-ish in that range. This is not really the kind of guy that would demand, like, you know, a first round pick or anything like that. I mean, he's a free agent NCAA pickup who is already in his mid-20s, so there should be some expiration date looming in the future, I would think, when it comes to his value. But let me know in the comments all your thoughts about Duszak and the profile he possesses. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.